The bell above the door jingled, a timid sound that barely carried in the emptiness of the store. I glanced up from the register. One customer, a man in a threadbare hoodie, hands buried deep in his pockets. His eyes, dark and watchful, flicked past the aisles like he was counting them. "Excuse me," he said, voice low. "Is the aisle that loops still safe to enter?" I froze. I'd heard whispers of it. Late-night tales from colleagues, scribbled in margins of schedule logs, warning newbies not to get lost in the twisted geometry of that section. Nobody spoke about it outright, but everyone knew. We've had no problems," I said, though my voice felt hollow. The fluorescent light above me flickered once, then hummed in a steady, almost malicious tone. He nodded, a slight twitch in his jaw, and disappeared into the store before I could say more. I stared after him, heart thudding against the quiet hum. I'd never actually seen the aisle that loops. Not fully. Only the edge, glimpsed during stock runs, where the shelves seemed wrong. Wrong angles, like a shelf slightly shifted from reality. Items repeated in odd patterns. A box of cereal would appear 3 steps down, then again, and then a 4th time if you walked slowly enough. I had chalked it up to exhaustion, but curiosity gnawed at me. After 20 minutes, I told myself I'd check it. Nobody was coming back tonight. The man had left, his footsteps fading into the night outside, leaving only the soft hiss of the fridge motors and the distant hum of refrigeration units. I pushed my chair back and walked toward the far end of the store. The aisle was tucked between the snack section and the frozen foods. At first glance, it was ordinary, brightly labeled, stocked, orderly. But as I stepped closer, a subtle tension grew in the air. The lights overhead shivered again, sending staccato shadows crawling across the polished linoleum. The further I walked in, the longer the aisle felt, stretching impossibly, folding in on itself. I noticed it immediately, a bottle of soda on the bottom shelf. I passed it, and then, a heartbeat later, it was again, and again, each repetition slightly different. The label smeared, the cap twisted. I tried to tell myself it was fatigue. I walked further. Each step made the store seem smaller, tighter. The shelves leaned slightly toward me, just enough to make me aware of the space around me. The light flickered faster. My reflection in the glass-fronted freezers blurred and elongated. And then footsteps. I froze. Soft behind me, not mine, out of sync with my own. 1, 2, 3 steps, a pause. 4, 5. My pulse caught on every echo. I spun, expecting someone to appear, but the aisle was empty. I pressed on. The aisle seemed to respond, stretching, looping, folding into itself in ways I couldn't measure. I turned a corner, or what I thought was a corner, and found myself looking at the same display of chips I had passed moments ago. Then the soda, then the chips again. I stopped. My reflection in the freezer glass didn't match my movements. My hands trembled. The space felt alive, aware of me. Every glance down the aisle seemed to shift its shape, reshuffle the products, repeat patterns just out of sync with reality. I turned around. The aisle behind me gone. Where I had entered, there was only another stretch of shelves, identical but wrong. The fluorescent lights hummed louder, a vibration that made my teeth ache. My breaths felt shallow, trapped. A whisper of movement. To my left, a shadow stretched along the floor. Too long, too fluid. I stepped toward it, and it recoiled, folding back into the shelves. The aisle reacted to me, to my gaze, to my fear. I tried to retreat, but every step forward, backward, sideways seemed to return me to the same point. The same repeating soda bottles, the same chips, the same distorted reflection. The air was thick, electric. I felt watched, not by a person, but by the space itself. Panic rose. I tried to shout, but the sound came out wrong, muffled, bouncing around the looped corridor like a voice trapped in a canyon. Then I noticed it. A small, crooked sign I hadn't seen before. "Welcome back," it said. No branding, no price tag. Just those words, hung crookedly on the shelf end cap. My stomach sank. I moved faster. Each turn, each step, made the aisle pulse and warp around me. Products appeared behind me as soon as I looked away. The loop was alive, feeding on my movement. The lights above stuttered. Shadows lengthened. And then a figure, dim, half-formed, standing several steps ahead. I froze. It mimicked me, walking, gesturing, moving just as I had. But when I stepped closer, it dissolved into the shelves, replaced by an impossible repetition of cereal boxes, stacked identically in every possible angle. I realized then that the aisle did not just trap people. It mirrored them, consumed them, turned their attention into the mechanism that held them there. The loop had intention, awareness, hunger. I tried to retrace my steps, counting, marking the floor tiles with a pen I pulled from my pocket, but the markings repeated, shifted, multiplied. I was in a corridor that didn't obey physics, that twisted my perception, reshuffled reality to keep me inside. A whisper of fabric brushing the floor. Another shadow. I caught a glimpse of the man in the hoodie, standing several aisles away, watching, as if he had been inside this loop for hours, days, or years. But when I ran toward him, he vanished, leaving only another pattern of products I had already passed. I backed away, heart hammering. Somewhere in the hum of the lights, a quiet voice seemed to echo my own thoughts. Don't look. Don't step. Don't leave. Then, finally, a break in the shelves. A faint, ordinary glow from the main store. Relief surged. I ran, stumbling past repeating soda bottles, past shifting cereal boxes, ignoring the hum, the whisper, the flickering lights. I reached the end. The aisle opened to the main floor. Everything seemed normal again. I looked back. The aisle that loops appeared just like any other aisle. Fluorescent lights steady, shadows aligned. The chill had vanished. I told myself it was a hallucination, a product of exhaustion and late-night monotony. But as I returned to the register, I caught sight of something in the corner of my eye. A row of chips, stacked in impossible symmetry, with a small, crooked sign. Welcome back. The man had left a note. Or had he left me? I wasn't sure. And I realized, as I sat in the quiet hum of the store, that some aisles didn't just store products. Some aisles stored people. And tonight it had stored me. The store's ceiling began dripping, but only above me. At first, I thought it was a leak. Old buildings do that. The refrigeration units hum too hard, condensation builds, and something somewhere gives way. It's normal. Annoying, but normal. But this wasn't that. The drop didn't fall until I stepped forward. I heard it before I felt it. A faint, deliberate tick against the tile just behind my shoe. I stopped. The store was quiet in the way it always is past midnight. Fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, coolers breathing in low mechanical cycles, the faint plastic rattle of chip bags shifting when the AC kicks on. Another tick. I looked down. A small, dark spot spread on the white tile, glossy but not quite reflective. Too thick to be water. It held its shape longer than it should have before slowly flattening, like it was deciding whether to seep outward or stay contained. I took a step back. The dripping stopped. For a moment, the store returned to its usual shape. Predictable. Safe in that hollow, artificial way late-night places pretend to be. Then I stepped forward again. Tick. Same place. Same sound. But this time, it landed just in front of my shoe. I looked up. The ceiling above me was no different than anywhere else. Off-white panels set in a metal grid, slightly yellowed with age. No stain, no crack, no sign of moisture. But I could feel it. A faint coolness directly above my head. Localized, like standing under a vent, except there wasn't one there. Another drop formed. I didn't see it gather. I just knew when it was about to fall. There was a subtle tension in the air, a quiet tightening, and then, tick, it hit the floor exactly where I would have stepped if I'd moved. I didn't move. The store stretched out around me in long, silent aisles. Candy to my left, canned goods to my right. Everything aligned, orderly, indifferent. Except this. I stepped sideways. No drip. I stepped back into the original spot. Tick. My throat tightened. Okay, I muttered. though I wasn't sure who I was reassuring. Just a leak. I grabbed a mop bucket from behind the counter and wheeled it over, positioning it beneath the invisible source. The wheels squeaked louder than usual, echoing farther down the aisles than they should have. I set the bucket down. Waited. Nothing. I stepped directly under the spot again. Tick. The drop missed the bucket entirely, landing just behind my heel. I turned slowly. The bucket sat exactly where I'd placed it, centered beneath the ceiling panel. But the drip wasn't. It wasn't falling from a fixed point. It was following me. A low hum pulsed through the refrigeration units. Louder now, uneven. I glanced toward the coolers. Their glass doors reflected the aisle in warped, dim fragments. And in the reflection, I wasn't standing where I was. I was a few steps to the left, directly under a dark patch on the ceiling. I looked up again. Nothing there. Back to the reflection. The patch pulsed, subtle like a slow inhale. I stepped away from the aisle. The lights above me flickered once, sharply, then stabilized. Behind me, in the aisle I just left, they dimmed, not fully, just enough to make the shelves look deeper, the shadows between products thicker. Tick. I froze. The sound came from behind me this time. I hadn't stepped back. I turned. The drip hit the floor in the dimmed aisle, right where the reflection had shown me standing. It lingered there, glossy and wrong. I swallowed and took a cautious step toward it. The air shifted again, that same tightening, like the store was holding its breath. Tick. Now it was closer. Always just ahead of where I moved. Always anticipating. "You've got to be kidding me," I whispered. My voice didn't travel right. It felt swallowed halfway down the aisle, absorbed by the shelves. I moved faster. The dripping kept pace. Not faster, not chasing, but aligning. Selecting. Each drop landed precisely where my next step would fall if I didn't stop. It wasn't reacting. It was predicting. Or guiding. I backed away, heart pounding now. The hum of the store deepened, dropping in pitch until it felt like it was vibrating inside my chest. The lights above me dimmed. Only above me. The rest of the store remained the same, bright, sterile. But the space I occupied sank into a muted gray, like a spotlight in reverse. Tick. This one didn't hit the floor. It struck my shoulder. I flinched hard, stumbling into a shelf. Bags of chips rustled violently, far louder than they should have. One fell, hitting the ground with a hollow, delayed thud. The liquid didn't feel like water. It was cooler, denser. It clung for a moment before sliding down the fabric of my shirt, leaving a faint, slick trail that didn't fully soak in. I wiped at it. It resisted. For a second, it stretched between my fingers and the fabric, thin and elastic, before snapping back and disappearing into the cloth as if it had never been there. I stared at my hand. Dry. No residue. But I could still feel it. A faint pressure, like something had pressed itself into me and then withdrawn. Behind me, the cooler doors rattled softly. I turned. In the reflection, I was no longer alone. Something hovered above me. Not a shape, more like a distortion. A darker absence pressed against the ceiling, directly over my position, spreading slightly beyond the edges of my shoulders. And from it, a thread. Thin, almost invisible, descending toward me. I spun around. Nothing. But the air above me felt heavier now. Closer. Tick. Another drop hit the floor. Closer than before. Not where I was stepping. Where I was standing. My chest tightened. It had adjusted. I moved. The drop followed. Not ahead anymore. On me. Each step I took, it corrected, recalibrated, until the drip aligned perfectly with my position. The delay between movement and drop shrank until, tick, there was no delay at all. Fell with me, synchronized. The lights above me flickered again, then dimmed further. The aisle around me seemed to narrow, shelves leaning in just slightly, enough to make the space feel wrong. The hum of the store flattened into a single, continuous tone. I looked down. The floor beneath me was dotted with those dark, glossy spots now, but they weren't spreading anymore. They were arranging, subtly, imperceptibly at first. But when I focused, I saw it. They formed a pattern. Not random splashes. Positions. Points. A shape I couldn't quite understand unless I stepped back. But I couldn't step back. Because wherever I moved, it followed. Tick. This one landed on my hand. I didn't wipe it away. I watched it. It didn't slide this time. It held. Surface tension, impossibly strong, keeping it perfectly rounded against my skin. Then it shifted. Not downward. Inward. A faint pressure again. Stronger now, like a fingertip pressing through my hand without breaking the surface. I gasped and shook it off. The drop fell to the floor and joined the others, completing something. The hum stopped. Dead silence filled the store. The lights stabilized, but only outside my space. Around me, the dimness deepened into something almost solid. I looked at the floor again. The pattern had finished forming, and I understood it. Not a symbol, not exactly. A marker, position, point in space. My position. The realization settled slowly, heavily. The dripping had never been random. It hadn't been chasing me. It had been mapping me, refining, correcting, selecting. I looked up one last time. The ceiling above me wasn't flat anymore. It bowed inward, subtly, like something was pressing down from the other side, stretching the panel just enough to make its edges curve. And at its lowest point, a single drop formed, larger than the others, waiting, not falling yet, as if it needed confirmation, as if it was checking that I was still exactly where it wanted me. The store beyond my little circle of dim light remained perfectly normal, bright, quiet, unaware. But here something had found me, chosen me, and the drip wasn't a leak. It was a signal. Or worse, a way to make sure I didn't move when it finally decided to come through.